Welcome back to my YouTube channel. In the hum of machines deep within the U.S. Mint in 1979, a new era of coinage was pressing forward. The Kennedy half-dollar, still bearing the visage of a fallen president, was striking the presses in large numbers. The country was inching away from the turmoil of the 1970s, political upheaval, inflation, and the scars of Vietnam all lingering beneath the surface. Amidst it all, these coins emerged in silver-less copper-nickel-clad form, carrying the dignity of their design yet stripped of their earlier intrinsic value. They were everyday tokens now, meant for hands, pockets, and change jars, not vaults or velvet-lined cases. Or so it seemed. Most bore the familiar D of the Denver Mint or the S from San Francisco, reserved for proofs. But a fair number rolled out with the simple P from Philadelphia, a detail easy to overlook. Yet in that minting year, a quiet anomaly slipped through the cracks of routine, an anomaly that, for years, would pass undetected. Thousands of 1979 Kennedy half-dollars were produced, circulated, and forgotten. But one among them held something different. Not immediately, not with obvious flair. No dramatic off-center strike, no double image, no missing clad layer. Just a subtle nuance, buried in the gleam of metal and overlooked by every glance. A variation so small, it would take an obsessive eye to notice. And that's exactly what it found. Across the country in the late 80s, a young collector named Eli wandered the tables of a modest coin show in Pennsylvania. He was no expert, no seasoned numismatist with a monocle and magnifier. Just a passionate amateur, entranced by the legacy of coins, the stories they told, the presidents they immortalized. He lingered over bins marked junk silver and flipped through rolls of Kennedy halves, more out of habit than hope. That's when he saw it. The mint mark, it wasn't like the others. The S was sharper, more defined, but slightly off. A closer look confirmed it. The shape differed from the standard 1979 S proof. This was something else. He didn't know it at the time, but he was holding what would later be dubbed the Type 2 mint mark, an error so obscure, so minuscule that even dealers had passed it by, classifying it with its common cousin, the Type 1. But Eli had always been drawn to the details. The serif on the S was almost absent, smoothed into an elegant curve. It lacked the frosty bulk of the usual punch. He bought the coin for $3, thinking it was simply a well-preserved proof. He placed it into his binder, surrounded by coins he considered far more valuable. Months later, in the small glow of a desk lamp and a magnifier, he stumbled across an article in Coin World that mentioned two varieties of the 1979 S half-dollar. The Type 1, mushy and indistinct, and the rarer, more refined Type 2. A shiver ran down his spine. He flipped open the binder and pulled the coin back out. Holding it up, inspecting it again and again, comparing photos, descriptions, diagrams. It matched. It was the rare one. His hands trembled, not from the potential value, but from the sheer thrill of the find. To discover something that had eluded experts. To realize a mistake had become a treasure. Over time, word spread about the Type 2 variety. Collectors began scouring their proof sets, hoping to find the sleek S that hinted at a corrected mint mark punch introduced mid-year. Only a fraction of the 1979 S proof half-dollars bore it, making it instantly rarer. The coin Eli had purchased for pocket change was now commanding attention. Not in thunderous headlines, but in whispers among collectors, in rising bids on niche forums, in the private exchanges of coin shows. In 1989, it was worth $15,000. By 1995, it had climbed to $30,000, and the once dismissed proof was now sliding into plastic slabs at grading services, coming back with proud labels. Type 2, Clear S. The market began watching. Collectors whispered that the coin was undervalued, that only a fraction of the proof sets contained it, that the true scarcity was still unknown. Every time a new set was opened, every time a collector leaned in under the harsh light of inspection, there was the breathless hope of finding that sleek serifless mark, Then came the auctions. A Type 2 graded PR69 by PCGS went for $60,000. Then $85,000. Prices didn't just rise. They darted unpredictably, surging one month and plateauing the next. In 2007, a specimen fetched over $200. Not staggering, but impressive for a coin once thought routine. Eli watched from afar, never selling his. To him, it was never about the money. It was about the connection, the improbable intimacy with American history. The idea that he, just a curious soul with an eye for the overlooked, had found a sliver of the past hiding in plain sight. Years passed. The story of the 1979 S-Type 2 coin settled into the canon of modern numismatics. Specialists knew it, casual collectors heard of it, and eBay listings now flaunted the term as if it were a badge of honor. But while that was unfolding, something else, far more peculiar, had gone unnoticed, until a different kind of collector came along. Her name was Dr. Lena Hirsch, a metallurgical analyst by profession and a numismatic historian by passion. She wasn't content with stories. She wanted facts. Metal compositions. Die diagnostics. Patterns. She collected errors not for aesthetics, but forensics. In 2018, she acquired a batch of 1979 S-Type 2 halves from various sellers, determined to trace minting inconsistencies across a single coin type. What she discovered was unsettling. Among her set, one coin deviated. The face looked ordinary. The Kennedy portrait, the gleaming background, the elegant, serifless S, all matched. But the reverse showed signs of doubling, not the well-documented mechanical doubling seen on lesser errors, but a peculiar die anomaly near the eagle's wing and tail feathers. She sent it in for analysis. Under microscopic imaging, it was confirmed. A Class 6 double die reverse. And it wasn't a fluke. It had occurred during die creation, not post-strike damage. That meant multiple coins might exist with the same anomaly. The implications were staggering. If the rare Type 2 proof mint mark had intersected with a die still carrying this doubling flaw, it meant the rarity was compounded. A rare mint mark married to a rare doubling error, essentially creating a coin that shouldn't exist. Not officially. Not logically. But there it was, indisputably present in Lena's possession. She dubbed it the Shadow Eagle. Her discovery made ripples in closed collector circles. Authenticators reviewed her findings, and consensus grew. This was no fabrication. And yet, few others emerged. Maybe only a handful were struck before the die was replaced. Or maybe they still slept in unopened proof sets, nestled in basements and attics across America, their secret intact. Auctions buzzed. The mere possibility of a shadow eagle appearing was enough to inflate demand for all Type 2s. Prices spiked from $300 to $600 within weeks. And when a second specimen surfaced in 2020, this time verified and slabbed, bidding crossed $1, 200 in under an hour. Suddenly, the quiet footnote of the 1979 S half dollar became a crescendo in the collector world. It was no longer just a clean mint mark. It was the hint of something deeper, stranger, more layered. A story told in metal and mistakes. A tale of chance meeting precision, of obscure detail becoming monumental. And while the majority still chased the standard Type 2 for its historical cachet, a select few were now hunting ghosts, tracing rumors, dissecting auction photos, even x-raying unopened proof sets, desperate to glimpse the faint doubling that would mark the rarest of all. The coin Eli had found decades ago? It was just a Type 2. But now, with prices climbing toward the thousands, he received offers regularly. Some collectors even asked if he'd had it scanned, just in case. He smiled, declining every offer. He didn't need confirmation. He didn't need the money. That coin had already paid him in wonder. The value wasn't just in its error or its market worth. It was in what it had become. A marker of mystery. A symbol of the unseen. A whisper from the machines of 1979, telling a story no one was supposed to hear. In the twilight of the 20th century, as America stood on the cusp of a new millennium, the U.S. Mint quietly continued a tradition rooted in decades of national pride and artistry. Among the clinks and whirs of the Denver and Philadelphia minting presses in 1998, countless Kennedy half-dollars rolled out, gleaming with the familiar profile of the late president. For most, this coin was just another iteration in a long series of annual issues that had, by then, lost much of their everyday circulation appeal. The Kennedy half-dollar, once introduced in the wake of tragedy in 1964, had slowly faded into the background of commerce, surviving more as a commemorative piece than a transactional mainstay. Yet within the 1998 mintage, a year not marked by any sweeping redesign or anticipated overhaul, something curious happened. At first glance, the coin seemed routine. The specifications were unchanged: copper-nickel clad, 30.6 millimeters in diameter, 11.34 grams in weight. Over 36 million were struck that year, split between Denver and Philadelphia. The numbers offered no hint of anomaly, no whisper of a mistake. But deep within those millions, a subtle aberration occurred, one so delicately woven into the coin's metallic surface that it might have escaped 1,000 trained eyes. And it did. For months, perhaps years, the error slumbered, nestled in the hands of the unaware or trapped within the dark recesses of old bank rolls. It wasn't until a collector in Ohio, Harold Fenwick, mid-50s, and a lifelong numismatist with a preference for hunting half-dollars, began sorting through a batch from a local credit union that the first signs emerged. Fenwick had a ritual. He would drive home with the weight of $100 worth of halves in his trunk, lay them out across his kitchen table, and with magnifier in hand, begin the slow, meditative act of inspection. That night in early spring, nothing seemed unusual until he reached a coin that, under bright LED light, seemed off. The rim felt different, less defined. And the mint mark, Philadelphia, seemed to blur subtly into the field. The more he stared, the more his heart began to tick louder, faster. Something wasn't aligning with the thousands he'd seen before. He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he cross-referenced every catalog and mint error manual he owned, compared photographs, even called a friend at a regional coin club. The error became clearer in his mind as dawn broke. A subtle but undeniable strike-through error combined with what appeared to be a double die on the obverse. Not a dramatic doubling, but a gentle ghosting around Kennedy's profile, most noticeable in the hair and along the edge of the jaw. But it wasn't just doubling. The surface itself had a slightly frosted quality in certain light, particularly around the motto, "In God We Trust," which gave the impression of a proof finish on what was undeniably a business strike. The coin was a paradox. Two realities pressed into one. Fenwick sent the coin to a grading service, nervously tucking it into a padded envelope and waiting weeks for the return. When it came back, it bore a label he'd never seen associated with a 1998 half-dollar. Specimen finish, obverse die adjustment / double die obverse, MS66. That final line confirmed what he already suspected. This wasn't just a mistrike or mechanical blip. It was a specimen-quality coin struck during a transitional adjustment period, likely when dies were being tested or repolished without full coordination between mint departments. The presence of a double die added another layer of mystery. Had the mint reused a die improperly? Had there been a momentary lapse in protocol? Whatever the case, the result was a numismatic chimera. Word spread slowly at first. Online forums picked up the tale. A user named H__ from Ohio posted pictures, and skeptical voices soon turned into cautious intrigue. Other collectors checked their 1998 rolls. A few similar examples emerged, scattered across the country, one in California, another in Florida, but never more than a handful. Each bore variations in the intensity of the error, suggesting they were struck in close succession during a brief window of flawed production. No official mint announcement was ever made. There was no confirmation, no admission. Just a quiet mystery left for the coin world to dissect and debate. Local coin shows, Buzz began to build. Fenwick's original coin was offered $800 in a private offer, then $1,200. He declined. Months later, a near-identical piece sold at auction for $2,350. The catalog listed it as unconfirmed transition specimen, Kennedy half, rare error variant. Still, many remained unaware, dismissing it as a curiosity rather than a rising rarity. But those in the know kept hunting. Over time, the value continued to ascend. By 2009, during the economic downturn, coin collecting saw a strange resurgence, and the 1998 anomaly was quietly gaining momentum among specialized error collectors. Prices hit $4,000, then plateaued, only to spike again in 2016 when a major numismatic YouTuber featured Fenwick's story in a video that went viral. Collectors, always part detective and part dreamer, relished the chase. Yet for all the chatter and excitement, no one could fully explain how or why the error had occurred. A few insiders speculated about an experimental die used briefly at the Philadelphia Mint to test proof strike quality before the release of a special mint set. But no such set was ever officially attributed to 1998 half dollars. Others whispered about a rogue employee, a midnight test run using leftover dies, or a partially implemented die polishing protocol that went unchecked. Theories spiraled, some grounded in logic, others steeped in folklore. Then came the twist that redefined everything. In 2021, a retired Mint employee named Daniel Crowley published a memoir, mostly overlooked except by die-hard coin historians. Tucked in a single paragraph, amid tales of late shifts and press malfunctions, was a passing reference to a specimen finish Kennedy struck in '98 by accident after a broken proof die was installed and ran for approximately 20 strikes before correction. The line hit the numismatic community like lightning. Though Crowley never named the coin or described its exact features, the implication was unmistakable. A proof die, intended for high relief, mirrored finishes, had been used, however briefly, on a standard production line. Not in San Francisco, where proofs were typically struck, but in Philadelphia. That single mistake, undetected by quality control in the early strikes, had yielded a handful of hybrids, half dollars with characteristics of both proof and circulation strikes. The ramifications rippled instantly. Collectors rushed back to their collections, magnifying glasses in hand, hoping they'd missed something earlier. Reputable dealers began reassessing their holdings. Suddenly, the 1998 half-dollar error wasn't just a curiosity. It was potentially the result of a documented mishap, a verified moment of cross-contamination between two entirely different production lines. Prices, already steep, began a steep ascent. The original Fenwick coin, now graded and preserved for over 2 decades, went to auction once again. It fetched $12 for 100. But it wasn't just about value anymore. This coin had become a storyteller's treasure, a snapshot of human error etched in metal. A reminder that even in the most regimented systems, in the most precise environments, anomalies find their way into existence and into legend. As more discoveries came to light, each bore slight variations, suggesting die fatigue or polishing alterations with each strike. The original batch, it seemed, was small. Less than 20 coins were ever confirmed to possess the full trifecta of abnormalities: the double die, the satin-like finish, and the subtly misaligned rim. Fenwick, now older and less active, still keeps the original coin's first photograph framed in his study. He's declined multiple offers to sell, even as valuations creep into 5-figure territory. When asked why, he simply says it reminds him that even after years of searching, something extraordinary can appear in the most ordinary places. The 1998 Kennedy half-dollar, once overlooked, now speaks in whispers and mystery, its legacy minted not just in nickel and copper, but in the memories of those who chased it, uncovered it, and continue to wonder how many more are still waiting to be found. In 1973, the United States was in flux. The Vietnam War was grinding to an uneasy halt, political scandal loomed over the White House, and Americans were shifting their attention to a changing economy and cultural landscape. Amid this national uncertainty, the U.S. Mint maintained its unshaken rhythm, presses pounding, dies striking, and coins rolling off the production lines by the millions. One such coin was the Kennedy half-dollar, minted that year in both Philadelphia and Denver, yet curiously absent from everyday circulation. Despite a mintage exceeding 150 million across both facilities, the public saw few of them. These half-dollars were produced exclusively for mint sets and not released into general use, a decision that would eventually lend 1973's issue a layer of intrigue. The Kennedy half had always stood as a tribute, born of a nation's grief in 1964 and preserved through the decades with modest changes. But the 1973 version, though outwardly typical in design and composition, bore within it a secret anomaly, one hidden not in the general strike, but in the smallest margin for human error. It started, like many such stories do, unnoticed. A misalignment here, an irregular polish there. The kind of thing that, unless you were looking for it, would pass as an unremarkable minting detail. Years would pass before anyone began to suspect that something lay beneath the surface of the 1973 half-dollar, a subtle divergence from minting norms that hinted at a mechanical hiccup or overlooked protocol. When collectors began combing through mint sets acquired from estate sales or long-forgotten drawers, a few oddities emerged. The first serious whisper of discovery came from a collector named Lyle Jensen, a retired machinist from Oregon with an affinity for the Kennedy series. He was known for examining coins under extreme magnification, not for value, but for the fascination of engineering. While reviewing a Philadelphia-struck half-dollar from a 1973 mint set, he noticed something odd. The edge reading looked less defined. Closer inspection revealed a peculiar doubling on the reverse, particularly around the eagle's outstretched talons. At first, he suspected simple mechanical doubling, a common and relatively valueless occurrence. But under a specialized scope, it became apparent the doubling was directional, clear, and isolated to devices and lettering, a hallmark of a true double die reverse. Jensen cross-referenced every known variety catalog available. Nothing matched. He hesitated before reaching out to a known grading service. The coin was raw, unspectacular in tone, and he doubted it would raise many eyebrows. Still, he mailed it in, with a note detailing his observations. 6 weeks later, the result came back. 1973 D. Kennedy half-dollar, double die reverse, MS-65. For Lyle, the excitement wasn't about money. It was the thrill of uncovering a mistake frozen in time, the kind of flaw that shouldn't exist in a coin meant only for pristine mint sets. Other discoveries trickled in. A small but notable group of 1973 D-halves began surfacing with similar traits: clean doubling on the eagle, odd weakness on the motto, and in some cases, a slight tilt in the planchet alignment. The errors weren't always consistent, which added to the enigma. Some were mild, others more dramatic. But the pattern couldn't be ignored. The coin community took notice. Collectors began dissecting mint set envelopes from 1973 with renewed fervor. Dealers reevaluated their stock. The double die reverse, while not officially recognized in early era registries, began to circulate informally among specialists. Coin forums were abuzz. A handful of experts proposed the theory that during the Denver Mint's production of mint set halves, a reverse die had been improperly prepared, perhaps repolished after use or misaligned during installation, resulting in a short-lived double die series that escaped quality checks. Still, no one could say exactly how many existed. The mint had no record of it, and official acknowledgement remained elusive. But this lack of clarity only added to the coin's mystique. Prices edged higher, slowly at first. A raw error specimen sold for $150 at a small show in Iowa. A year later, another fetched $400 in an online auction. Graded examples started appearing, though sparsely, often commanding four-figure sums depending on clarity and strike quality. One MS-66 example with bold doubling on both talons, and the olive branch sold for $2,300 quietly, without fanfare, but to an increasingly watchful market. Theories about the die preparation process swirled. Some suggested a broken proof die was mistakenly installed during the mint set run, accounting for the strange polish and light doubling. Others believed it might have been the result of haste, an overworked technician preparing dies late in the production season. Whatever the origin, the result was a coin that bridged the line between intended precision and accidental creation. But the story didn't stop at the doubling. In 2019, a collector in Michigan named Erica Lopez discovered something even stranger. Inside an original government-issued 1973 mint set, she found a Kennedy half that seemed unusually dark in luster. The coin's surface shimmered not in bright nickel hues, but in a warm, almost satin glow. Initially, she assumed toning had set in from decades of storage. But when she rotated it under a desk lamp, a distinct cartwheel effect shimmered across the surface, something typical of proof-like finishes. She submitted the coin to PCGS. The result? 1973 D Kennedy half-dollar, specimen-like finish, MS67 PL. The grading note included an unusual qualifier. Possible early die state, proof-like characteristics present. The possibility that a batch of early struck coins had received unusually high-pressure strikes, or perhaps had been tested using burnished planchets, added a new layer of complexity. It reignited interest among specialists, who began cross-referencing doubled die examples with coins showing similar mirrored fields. Though not all matched, several began to display overlapping traits. That's when the coin's reputation began to shift. The 1973 half-dollar, once seen as an ordinary set piece, was now emerging as a layered mystery. A doubled die reverse that slipped through the cracks, a potential hybrid of minting techniques, and an entire mintage shielded from circulation. These elements, though subtle in isolation, formed a rare alignment. Not only was the coin technically scarce, but its errors and finish placed it in a category with few modern comparables. By 2023, high-grade double die examples were commanding up to $4,000 at auction. Those with both doubling and PL surfaces had crossed into even higher territory. One such piece, cataloged as 1973 D DDR with proof-like surfaces, PCGS MS67 PL, stunned attendees at a major Las Vegas coin show when it sold for $11,700. The final value, however, isn't just a number. It's the culmination of decades of overlooked details, chance discoveries, and collector intuition. From the quiet presses of Denver in 1973 to the heated bidding wars of today, the Kennedy half-dollar has proven that even the most unassuming coin can carry with it a legacy shaped by accident, persistence, and the thrill of the unknown.